Welcome to this week's session of Fridays on the Farm. This week we're going to change up our original plan a little bit and take advantage of Mother Nature's curveball and talk about some of those winter weather considerations. As winter weather approaches, you start to hear all the weathercasters tell you to keep your pets inside. Things are going to be too warm, nothing can stay outside. Well, if you're a livestock producer, that's really not feasible. And so today we're going to talk about some of the things to help you get these cows through a storm and what you really need to consider. A cow's threshold for handling cold temperatures is actually at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And so as long as it doesn't get too cold for too long, our cows can actually be okay handling it just like they normally do. One thing that is important to realize is that as temperature decreases, their consumption is going to increase. So it's important that we have plenty of feed available for these cattle. We may be putting hay out more often than normal. And not only are they going to eat more hay, but also think about your calves. If you have little calves in this kind of weather, they're going to need somewhere warm and dry. Maybe you're putting out a little extra hay because you know they're going to use it as bedding. You may waste a little bit more, but that's a good option for those little calves to have somewhere warm and dry to get. Keep that in mind as it continues to storm. For instance, today we're seeing freezing rain come in and out most of the day. That means we may have to go back out this evening and put another bale out just so they have some warm hay to get into. Some people have some kind of shed that maybe you can put hay under to keep it a little bit drier. Maybe you do have an old barn that you could put one bale of hay in so that those calves have somewhere to get in out of the weather. Keep that in mind as you're planning. Also think about that when you're doing your winter evaluations of what needs to change for next year. Maybe that means you need to add a shed or somewhere to run in for when these storms hit so that you have better options, especially if you've got little calves in this kind of weather. Another consideration is your water troughs. It's not fun to go out and break ice. None of us like that job, but there's got to be a freshwater option for these cattle. If you've got water tanks, you need to be going out and keeping an eye on those to make sure that there's a place they can get in to drink. Even if you're drinking out of ponds or even creeks, make sure that water's running if it's a creek and they can get to it. Or if it's a pond, you may have to go crack some places in the ice so that they have access to it. Luckily, so far, this storm hasn't seemed quite as bad as they may have called it to be here in Hot Spring County, but other places in the state have seen some of those. As it gets cold and wet, your cows are actually going to increase their energy requirement 1.5 times as much as what it normally is. So it's important that we're feeding these cows to meet that energy requirement as well. Cold and wet is actually a worse combination than just cold in these kind of temperatures. As the temperature drops below 32 degrees, for every 5 degrees it decreases, they're going to increase their consumption by 1.3%, which means you're probably going to have to be putting more hay out on these colder days and feeding a little bit extra. But on the other side of that coin, wet and cold is actually even a worse combination, because for every inch of mud that those cows are standing in, they're going to decrease their consumption by 2.3%. So it's important that we've got a place that may be out of the mud for these cows to get so they can eat. Keep that in mind when you're putting hay out. Maybe that means you're moving hay closer over to a wood line and out of your general pasture. That'll provide a little bit of cover for these cattle. But just keep in mind that these cows are going to need a place to go where they can get a little bit out of the weather. There's a dry place for those calves to get so that those cows can help keep them warm as well. And also don't forget to be safe. Lots of folks can have the idea of a snow day means bundled up inside in front of a fireplace, but as producers we don't have that luxury. We know we've got to be out taking care of these cattle, taking care of our livestock, and making sure that our world keeps turning. But make sure as you're doing that you're being safe. Watch for those slick places in the road. Make sure that you're going to be able to get out and that you're not going to be stuck out somewhere. Just be safe. Another consideration when it comes to these calves is if you're having calves right now. If you're having calves in the middle of these cold, wet winter storms, you want to keep a close eye on them. Check your cows a couple times a day so you know who's about to have calf. When they are calving, you want to see those calves get up and nurse within the first 30 minutes. This wet weather is going to hit them hard and it'll hit them pretty fast. You may go ahead and have a place set up where if you do have a calf that has difficulty, you've got a warm place to go with it. Whether that's a truck cab or inside in front of a fireplace, whatever that option is. I've seen lots of people even take hair dryers to calves that were having a hard time. Be close and be ready to help with those little calves and help them get stronger, especially in those first couple hours if they're coming in the middle of one of these storms. At the end of the day, you know your operation and you know what your cattle need. Keep an eye on them, do what they need to, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for joining us for this week's session of Fridays on the Farm. Stay warm and we'll see you next Friday.